Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
Chapter 1.
The Aethelgard Confluence floated in the silent dark between the gravitational wells of the serene Republic of Viridia and the mercantile hegemony of the Grishna, a place where all species could meet without fear. It was not a station built by any one power, but a relic of the progenitors, the enigmatic architects of the galactic core, repurposed and maintained by a coalition of the Great Old One's civilizations measured in tens of thousands of years. Humans had stumbled upon it 50 standard years ago, a young species still blinking in the harsh light of the stellar neighborhood. They had been granted custodianship not by right of conquest or ancient lineage, but by a pragmatic vote of the coalition. Their adaptability, their relentless curiosity, and their infuriating, stubborn optimism made them ideal neutral stewards for this crossroads of the stars. Princess Lyriana Versothos, heir to the crystal throne of the Sylvani Commonwealth, stepped from her family's living ship, the Verdant Will, onto the polished light-absorbing floors of the Confluence's primary docking spire. Her people were ancient. Their recorded history spanned 12 millennia. They had cultivated their worlds into paradises of symbiotic biology, their lifespans measured in centuries, their thoughts slow and deep as continental drift. Her silver hair, woven with living crystal filaments, flowed like a captured river down her back. Her eyes, the violet of a twilight sky on her homeworld of Silva Prime, swept the chamber with cold, assessing judgment. Behind her, 6 elite guardians of the glade moved with a predator's grace. They were tall, slender, their skin patterned with bark-like textures, their eyes multifaceted. Captain Vorl, his staff a living branch that could channel bioelectric energy, held loosely in one hand, led them. He had served the Versothos line for over 200 of his 250-year lifespan. A human official waited at the inner airlock. He was a small man, with gray hair cropped close and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He bowed, a gesture his people had adopted from a dozen cultures but never mastered. "Your Highness, I am Administrator Cole. We are honored by your presence at the Aethelgard Confluence." Lyriana gave a single precise nod. "The Concordat negotiations begin tomorrow. I trust my suite is prepared?" "Of course, everything is ready." Cole hesitated, his fingers twitching. "There is, however, one matter. Galactic tradition and the Confluence's own charter requires that all visiting dignitaries accept a human custodian during their stay, a security and cultural liaison. It is a formality, applied equally." Lyriana's jaw tightened. "I have 6 of the finest guardians of the glade protecting me. I do not need a human following me around." "I understand, Your Highness," Cole said quickly, the nervous smile fixed in place. "But the charter is clear. It is merely a symbolic gesture of trust in our stewardship." Captain Vorl stepped forward, his compound eyes glinting. "Where is this custodian? Let us see what kind of protector the humans provide." Cole turned and gestured to a shadowed alcove. A man walked forward. He moved with a casual ground-eating stride that spoke of long familiarity with artificial gravity. He was of average height, average build, with short brown hair and features so plain they seemed deliberately forgettable. He wore simple, durable gray fatigues, unadorned and unmarked. No visible weapons, no armor, no device. His hands were tucked into the pockets of his trousers. He stopped before Lyriana and offered a slight, respectful nod. "Your Highness, I'm Kaelen. I've been assigned as your custodian." Lyriana stared. She looked for the aura of a warrior, the bearing of a hunter, the calm of a seasoned protector. She found only blandness. He looked like a man who'd just finished a shift in a hydroponics bay. "This is a joke," she said, turning to Cole. "You send this person to protect me? He looks like a strong breeze would knock him over." A soft chuckle came from her guardians. The sound was like rustling leaves. Captain Vorl grinned, showing the delicate needle-like teeth of his species. He placed a long, slender hand on Kaelen's shoulder and pushed. Kaelen stumbled back a single step, his arms flailing slightly for balance, but he did not fall. He did not retaliate. He did not even meet Voral's gaze. "Soft," Voral pronounced, disgust dripping from the word. "Like all your kind. You should have stayed on your little war-torn planet. You do not belong among the stars." Kaelen's voice was quiet, almost lost in the hum of the station. "Perhaps." Lyriana watched this exchange with cold satisfaction. Humans were a juvenile species. Their homeworld, Earth, was a chaotic, geologically violent place, and they had only achieved rudimentary starflight 2 centuries ago. Compared to the great old ones, they were newborns, intellectually brilliant but physically and socially immature. They built impressive things, this station, their nimble ships, but they were not true survivors. Not like her people, who had cultivated peace over millennia, or the Grishna, whose mercantile empire was built on ruthless, calculated strength. "Fine," Lyriana said, waving a dismissive hand. "If the charter demands it, I will accept him, but keep him away from me. I do not wish to see him unless the station is literally collapsing." She looked at Kaelen. "Do you understand? Stay out of sight. Try not to embarrass your species more than you already have." Kaelen gave another slight nod. "Understood, Your Highness." His acquiescence was more infuriating than defiance. There was no shame, no anger, no wounded pride. He simply accepted her words, as one might accept a weather report. Captain Voral loomed over Kaelen again. "You, human, you will address her as Your Highness at all times. You will speak only when spoken to. You will—" "Captain," Lyriana said, cutting him off, "that is enough. Let us proceed to our quarters. I wish to rest before the negotiations." She swept past Kaelen without a glance. Her guardians followed, their footsteps a soft whisper on the floor. Kaelen fell into step a dozen paces behind them, his hands still in his pockets, his head slightly bowed. Lord Theron, Dan Sothos, her cousin and chief political advisor, awaited them in the crystalline suite. He was a tall, elegant Sylvani, his features sharp and intelligent. "Cousin," he said, his voice like wind through leaves, "I trust your journey was comfortable?" "It was acceptable," Lyriana sighed, sinking into a chair grown from a living, pliant vine. "But now I must endure this ridiculous custodian law. They sent me the most useless man I have ever seen." Theron's gaze flickered to the closed door of the suite, beyond which Kaelen would be standing guard. "Ah, the human. I have heard whispers. Perhaps we should formally request a different assignment? Someone more traditional?" "It does not matter." Lyriana waved a hand. "He is a ghost. He will stand in the corridor and do nothing, and in 3 days we will leave, and I will forget his name." She paused, a cold knot forming in her stomach. "Theron, did you know about this requirement? Did you argue against it?" "I did," he said smoothly, "but the human custodianship is a point of pride for them, a symbol of their perceived impartiality. I was overruled by the Concordat Committee. Do not worry, Lyri. He is a non-entity, a piece of living furniture." Lyriana wanted to believe him. She tried to, but as she changed for the evening, she found her eyes drifting to the door. Through the small organic porthole she could see him. He was not leaning against the wall. He was not sitting. He was simply standing. In the sterile, brightly lit corridor, his plain form was a statue of patience. His eyes were open, scanning the flow of traffic station personnel, other dignitaries, maintenance drones with a slow, methodical precision. Something about it felt profoundly wrong. Guardians could stand watch for days, but their minds would wander, their postures would shift. This human was utterly still, yet vibrantly alert. It was as if he were a different species altogether from the bored man who had shuffled into the docking bay. She dismissed the thought. Exhaustion from the voyage and the politics to come clouded her mind. She dimmed the bioluminescent lights and lay down. Sleep did not come easily. The image of his calm, watching eyes lingered behind her eyelids. Outside, Kaelen stood perfectly still. The sounds of the Confluence's central hub were a distant murmur. His senses, honed not by magic, but by 200,000 years of brutal, relentless evolution on a planet that had tried to kill his ancestors every single day, drank it all in. The specific cadence of a Grishna merchant's multiple footsteps, the scent of ozone and recycled air, under which he could detect the faint telltale smell of a malfunctioning power conduit 3 decks down. The subtle shift in air pressure as a hidden service panel opened 50 meters behind him. His body was relaxed, but his mind was a live wire. He had been called useless. He had been mocked, pushed, and disregarded. He had said nothing, done nothing, but his eyes never stopped watching, and a cold, familiar calm settled in his gut. They have no idea, he thought. They have no idea what I am.
Chapter 2.
The first day of negotiations was a marathon of tedium. Lyriana sat at a crescent table of glowing crystal, representing the Sylvani Commonwealth. Across from her were a Grishna trade envoy, whose frills pulsed with irritation, and a Viridian bio-librarian whose moss-like hair drooped with sorrow. They argued over mining rights to the progenitor obelisks in the unclaimed drift. The Sylvani wanted them preserved as historical sites. The Grishna wanted to strip mine them for rare isotopes. The Viridians wanted to study their symbiotic ecosystems. Lyra navigated the ancient grievances and modern ambitions with the patience of her people, but inside, she was weary. Through it all, Kaelen stood in the designated custodian's alcove, a shadowed niche in the wall. He did not move. He did not speak. He was a piece of the station's architecture. But Lyriana began to notice things. During a recess, she saw him walking slowly along the perimeter of the great hall. His head was tilted back, studying the intricate non-functional patterns of the progenitor ceiling, not for art, but for airflow, for vantage points, for hidden spaces. His fingers, she saw, traced the edges of the air vents, measuring their width with a casual, unconscious precision. When a Viridian guard passed too close, Kaelen's entire body went still, not out of fear, but as if he were a piece of data being filed away. He watched the guard's hands, the way his eyes flickered to the exits, the slight hitch in his breath when the Grishna raised their voices. Later, she saw him near the main entrance, his lips moving silently. She realized he was counting the seconds between the rotation of the 3 security drones at the far end of the hall. He was mapping the patrol cycles. Chapter 3. That evening, a grand reception was held in the Confluence's central atrium. 1,000 guests mingled under a holographic sky that showed the shifting auroras of a distant nebula. Lyriana, in a gown of living silk that shimmered with internal light, was seated at the head table with the other chief negotiators. Kaelen stood against a pillar, dressed in the same plain gray fatigues. He was a shadow among the vibrant, exotic colors of the other species. But Lyriana could not stop watching him. Each time her gaze found him, he was observing a different element of the room. The main doors, the service entrances, the waitstaff moving with their trays, her own guardians, who stood like statues at the periphery. The food arrived on delicate, self-warming plates. As was customary for a person of her station, her personal taster, an ancient Sylvani named Malin who had served her family for 3 centuries, sampled everything before it reached her. This was normal. What was not normal was what happened next. Lyriana's plate, bearing a delicate arrangement of nutrient-rich fungi and crystallized nectar, was on a server's tray, making its way up to the dais. As it passed by Kaelen's pillar, it happened in a flicker of motion too fast for most to see. Kaelen's hand darted out. He did not touch the server. Instead, with a movement that was both economical and impossibly fast, he switched Lyriana's plate with an identical one from a tray held by a different server 10 feet away. He then resumed his pose against the pillar, his hands now casually clasped behind his back, his expression one of bored indifference. Lyriana stared at her plate. Had she imagined it? The fungi were in the same arrangement, the nectar glowed with the same soft blue light, but she was certain. She had seen his hands move. A cold suspicion, sharp and sudden, lanced through her fatigue. Lord Theron, seated to her left, dabbed his lips with a silk napkin. "The negotiations are proceeding well, Leary. I believe we may have a framework agreement by the end of the week." "Let us hope so," she murmured, her eyes fixed on Kaelen. "I am eager to return to Silva Prime." "Of course." Theron followed her gaze. "That human is still shadowing you. It must be so grating. Perhaps I could intercede with Administrator Cole. Have the custodian requirement waived for the duration?" Lyriana opened her mouth to agree, to be rid of this unsettling, useless man, but then she saw Kaelen's eyes. He was staring at Theron, not with boredom, but with a focus so intense it was like a physical force. His face was its usual placid mask, but his eyes were chips of flint. They moved over Theron's face, his hands, the way he held his glass, the slight tension in his shoulders. It was the look of a diagnostician examining a terminal illness, or a hunter assessing the health of prey. The look lasted less than a second. Then Kaelen blinked, and his gaze shifted to a group of laughing Grishna, his expression returning to vacant disinterest. A chill, deeper than any she had felt before, traced its way down Lyriana's spine. "No," she said slowly, her voice barely a whisper. "Leave him. He is harmless, and the charter is the charter." Theron's smile did not waver, but something in his eyes, a flicker of impatience perhaps, was gone in an instant. "As you wish, Your Highness." The banquet continued. Music swelled. Lyriana tried to engage in polite conversation, but her mind was racing. Who was this man? What game was he playing? Near the end of the night, a server carrying a tower of crystal glasses stumbled near the head table. A glass shattered on the polished floor, and a dark, sweet-smelling wine from the Grishna homeworld splashed toward Lyriana's gown. Before the first drop could touch the fabric, Kaelen was there. He materialized from the edge of the crowd, not running, but appearing between her and the spill. His body blocked the wine. His hand, which had been at his side, was now slightly raised, fingers curved, as if he had just begun to reach for something. The server babbled apologies. Guards rushed in to clean the mess. Everyone was looking at the broken glass, the spilled wine, but Kaelen was looking at the server. His eyes moved down to the man's leg, where his trousers had ridden up slightly, then back to his sweating face. The server paled, stammered something about a loose floor tile, and fled into the throng. Lyriana stared at Kaelen. "What was that? Why did you move? It was just a clumsy servant." Kaelen turned to her. For the first time, his voice was not quiet. It was low, steady, and carried a weight she hadn't heard before. "Clumsy servants do not have ceramic blade sheaths strapped to their inner thighs, Your Highness." The world stopped. The music, the chatter, the very air seemed to freeze. Lyriana's heart hammered against her ribs. She looked toward the spot where the server had vanished, but he was gone, swallowed by the crowd. She opened her mouth to shout, to call her guardians, to raise the alarm. "Do not react," Kaelen said, his voice still that calm steel-wrapped whisper. "If there is a threat, we do not want them to know we are aware. I will handle it." "Handle it? Handle what? Who was that man?" Kaelen did not answer. He simply stepped back, melting into the shadows by the pillar, becoming part of the architecture once more. Lyriana spent the rest of the night in a state of hypervigilance. Every time she looked at Kaelen, he was watching something else. The doors, the guests, the waitstaff, her guardians, even Theron. Who was this man? What did he know? Chapter 4. That night, sleep was impossible. She stood at her suite's viewport, staring at the endless starfield, trying to piece together the fragments of the evening. A soft knock at the door. Captain Vorel entered, his bioluminescent patterns dimmed with shame. "All is secure, Your Highness. My guardians have swept the suite and the adjacent corridors. There is no immediate threat." "What of the servant? The one who dropped the wine?" Vorel's multifaceted eyes could not meet hers. "He is unaccounted for. He seems to have departed the confluence via a maintenance conduit. But do not worry. It was likely a lone actor, a desperate individual perhaps, hoping to strike at a symbol of Sylvani pride." "Perhaps," Lyriana echoed, but she did not believe it. After Vor left, she looked out into the corridor. Kaelen was there, in his usual spot, a silhouette against the distant lights of the hub. He was not looking at her door. He was looking along the corridor towards the central transit nexus, his head tilted slightly, as if listening to a frequency only he could hear. She almost went out to him. She almost demanded answers, explanations, the truth. But a deeper instinct, older than protocol, held her back. This was no longer about a foolish custodian law. This was about survival. In another part of the station, Lord Theron Dan Sothos stood in his own secure chamber, a room lined with sound-dampening lichen. He held a small encrypted comms bead in his palm. His handsome face was a mask of cold fury. "The human saw something," he hissed into the bead. "He moved. He is not what he seems. He may be a problem." A smooth, synthetic voice answered from the bead. "He is one human. He is nothing. Tomorrow, during her walk in the progenitor garden, make it clean. The assets are in place. The distraction is arranged. Do not fail." Theron clenched his jaw. It will be done. He crushed the bead in his hand, the microcircuitry sparking and dying. He stared at the blood on his palm. For the Commonwealth, he told himself. For its future glory, unburdened by the past. He lay down, dreaming not of power, but of a Silva Prime, unmolested by the ghosts of ancient wars and alien compromises. And in the hallway, Kaelen continued his watch. He had not slept in 36 hours. His body was a temple of fatigue, but his senses were razor-sharp. The air tasted of deceit and impending violence. He could feel it in the station's subtle vibrations, in the too rapid heartbeat of a passing Grishna trader, in the way the ambient light seemed to dim a fraction of a percent around certain corners. A storm was coming. He had been waiting for it since the moment he'd seen Theron's eyes in the banquet hall. He was ready. Chapter 5. The Confluence's progenitor garden was a cathedral of impossible life. Under a dome of transparent aluminum, a contained ecosystem from a dozen worlds thrived. Trees with crystalline leaves shimmered. Flowers that bloomed only in the ultraviolet spectrum glowed softly. A stream of liquid mercury like metal flowed over rocks that hummed with ancient power. It was a place of profound peace. Lyriana walked the winding path, the stress of negotiations melting away. Her guardians fanned out, their senses extended. Kaelen followed at a distance of 10 paces, his hands now in his pockets once more, his head slightly bowed. Theron had excused himself to review the final territorial clauses. Lyriana felt a pang of guilt for her earlier suspicions, quickly smothered by political pragmatism. He was her cousin, her trusted advisor. The human was making her paranoid. The garden was quiet, save for the gentle hum of the environmental systems and the alien bird song. Lyriana stopped by a fountain where liquid light cascaded over black stone. She decided to test the human one more time. "Tell me, Kaelen, do your people truly believe they belong among the stars, among the great old ones?" Kaelen looked at her. He was silent for so long she thought he hadn't heard. Then he spoke, his voice quiet but clear in the serene space. "We do not believe it, Your Highness. We proved it." She arched a silver eyebrow. "Proved it? You are the youngest spacefaring species in the Concordat. You have been traversing the stars for less than 200 years. The Sylvani have been navigating them for 12,000. The Grishna for 8,000. The Viridians for—" "Time does not matter," Kaelen interrupted, his gaze drifting up to the dome where a replica of Earth's moon was in simulated ascent. "Only will. When we first looked up, we had no ships. We had dreams. But we wanted those lights so badly that nothing could stop us. Not distance, not the void, not the very real chance of extinction. We crossed our own oceans in fragile vessels. We walked across entire continents. We survived ice ages and supervolcanoes and pandemics. We did not have the luxury of being ancient. We had to be persistent." Before Lyriana could formulate a reply, the garden's lights died. Every bioluminescent plant, every gentle lamp, Every simulated star in the domed sky winked out. The artificial moonlight flickered and died. The serene space plunged into absolute, suffocating darkness. A chorus of shouts erupted. Captain Voral's voice cut through the panic. "Guardians, form on the Princess, now!" The Guardians moved with blinding speed, surrounding Lyriana in a protective circle, their bodies a living wall. They reached for their weapons, slender, elegant rods that could project coherent plasma, but the activation studs met only dead silence. "EMP," Voral snarled, his voice tight with a fear he would never admit to. "A focused pulse. Our systems are fried. We are unarmed." Lyriana's blood ran cold. An EMP would fry any complex electronics. Her Guardian's armor, their weapons, their life sign monitors all useless. She was surrounded by 6 fierce, powerful, unarmed warriors, and 6 highly trained, heavily armed assassins were about to step from the shadows. Shapes detached themselves from the crystalline trees and the dark undergrowth, silhouettes of lean, powerful figures moving with a silent, predatory grace. They wore matte black body armor that drank the light. They carried long, thin rifles that looked like elongated needles. "Kill them all," a flat, synthesized voice commanded from the darkness. "The Guardians are secondary. The Princess is primary. No witnesses." The assassins opened fire. Not with bullets, but with hypersonic shards of magnetically accelerated ceramic. 3 Guardians fell before the rest could even react, silent darts punching through their bark-like skin and into vital organs. The air filled with a crack, crack, crack of the weapons, and the soft thuds of bodies hitting the ground. Voral roared, a sound of pure bestial fury. He pulled a short, wicked-looking blade of monomolecular diamond from his belt, a weapon that required no electronics. "For the Commonwealth!" he bellowed, charging the nearest shadow. Lyriana screamed, paralyzed by horror. She watched her elite protectors cut down in seconds by enemies she couldn't even see properly. Where was Kaelen? She spun, expecting to find him cowering, or worse, fleeing. He was standing 10 feet behind her. He had not moved towards the fight. He was watching it, his head tilted, his eyes absorbing every detail. His hands were still in his pockets. Then he spoke, and his voice was not the quiet, deferential tone she knew. It was calm, measured, and utterly devoid of fear. "Your Highness, please close your eyes." She stared at him, dumbfounded. "What? What are you talking about? We have to run." "You do not run from this," Kaelen said. "You end it. Close your eyes. What you are about to see may be disturbing. It is better if you do not watch." Lyriana's pride, her entire worldview, screamed at her to refuse, to demand he protect her, now. But the look in his eyes, a terrifying, absolute certainty, silenced her. She closed her eyes. She heard the next sound she would remember for the rest of her long life. A soft thud, like a bag of wet sand hitting the ground, a choked gasp, the distinctive wet crack of something heavy and organic breaking, a strangled cry that was cut violently short. She kept her eyes squeezed shut, her hands over her ears, but she could not block out the sounds of violence. They were efficient, brutal, and terrifyingly fast. No grandiose sword fights, no energy blasts, just the swift, brutal efficiency of a butcher at work. The shooting stopped. The only sounds were the gentle flow of the mercury stream and the ragged fading breaths of the dying. "Area secure, Your Highness," Kaelen said. She opened her eyes. The scene was a nightmare painted in shades of bioluminescent blue and deep shadow. 12 assassins lay dead or dying. Some had necks bent at impossible angles. Others had chests that had been crushed inward. One had his own knife buried in his eye socket. Another was impaled on a shattered crystal branch. There was no elegance, no honor, only death, delivered with chilling mechanical precision. Kaelen stood amidst the carnage, his gray fatigue stained with dark fluids. He was breathing normally. He was not even sweating. Captain Voral stood a few feet away. his diamond blade hanging limp at his side, his multifaceted eyes wide with a horror that had nothing to do with the dead assassins. He had killed one man in the initial volley. This human had killed 12, without a weapon, without breaking stride. "What?" Vorel whispered, the word a dry leaf scraping in the wind. "What are you?" Lyriana walked forward, her legs unsteady. She approached Kaelen, as if he were a sleeping beast. "How?" she breathed. "Your species is physically weaker, slower, more fragile. Every comparative xenobiology text from the Sylvani archives to the Grishna guilds states it. Smaller hearts, weaker muscles, slower reflexes. How did you do this?" Kaelen looked at her, and for the first time, she saw a flicker of something in his eyes besides calm, profound exhaustion. "Do you know what Earth was like when my ancestors were evolving, Your Highness?" he asked, his voice quiet again. "It was a death world. Extreme temperatures, predators that could outrun a horse, prey that could kill with a single kick. Most species went extinct. Ours didn't have the option." He gestured to the dead around them. "We were not the strongest. We were not the fastest. We had no claws, no fangs, no natural armor. So we learned to think. We made tools from rocks. We learned to work together. We developed a strategy called persistence hunting. We would chase an animal on a hot day until it collapsed from exhaustion. We outlasted it. We are not built for a single powerful burst. We are built for endurance." He took a step toward her, and she did not flinch. "We are weak, yes, but we are stubborn. We do not know when to quit. We adapt. We overcome. The galaxy sees our smiles and our trade agreements and thinks we have softened. They forget what we are when we are pushed." Lyriana thought of the banquet, the clumsy servant, the switched plate. "The taster," she whispered. "You switched my plate. You knew." "I knew someone wanted you dead," Kaelen said simply. "I did not know who or how, so I created a situation where the poison of fast-acting neurotoxin derived from Grishna sea krill would be used on a plate I could control. I needed to see who would act, and how." "And Theron?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Lord Dan Sothos, was he behind this?" Kaelen's gaze was unreadable. "I suspect, but suspicion is not proof, not in a court of the Concordat. I needed the assassins to reveal themselves fully. I needed them to attack here, now, with a method that would bypass your Guardian's technological advantage. An EMP was the only way they could ensure a close-quarters kill. I let them think I was a non-threat, so they would use that method. It was a gamble." Vorel found his voice, a rough, broken thing. "A gamble? You gambled the life of the heir to the Sylvani throne? My princess?" "I gambled on her," Kaelen said, turning to the Guardian captain for the first time. "I gambled that she was valuable enough to be protected by more than just technology. I gambled that the assassins, in their arrogance, would believe a soft human was no threat, and would therefore engage in a manner I could counter. I did not gamble on her survival. I ensured it." He looked back at Lyriana, and for a second, the calm facade cracked, revealing a deep, weary sadness. "My kind has been gambling on survival for 200,000 years, Captain. We are very, very good at it." Lyriana sank to the ground, the beautiful alien flowers under her hands, suddenly feeling like a mockery. Her world, her understanding of the universe, lay shattered around her. The great old ones were not the only powers in the galaxy. There was another kind of strength, a quiet, relentless, terrifying strength that had just saved her life. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice small. "Now?" Kaelen looked up at the dark dome, where the simulated stars were beginning to reappear as emergency systems rebooted. "Now, we find out who hired the assassins, and we make sure they cannot try again." He offered her a hand. She took it. His grip was firm, calloused, and surprisingly strong. Chapter 6. The station lockdown was absolute. Security teams in powered armor swept every deck. The EMP blast had been localized to the Garden Dome, a signature technique of the Silent Terror, a mercenary cadre known for corporate espionage. They found the control node hidden in a maintenance conduit, its signal routed through a dozen dummy accounts. Lord Theron, Dan Sothos, did not resist arrest. He sat in his quarters sipping a glass of Sylvani amber wine, a serene smile on his face. "For the Commonwealth," he had said, as they led him away. "She is too accommodating, too willing to sign away our heritage to these children." A strong hand was needed. The evidence was circumstantial, but Kaelen had anticipated this. In the hours before the attack, he had used the Confluence's own public terminal grid, a system he was bored enough to be given access to create a series of false data trails that led from the dead assassin's encrypted comms through a labyrinth of financial transfers, and finally to a shell corporation owned by a consortium of Grishna and Viridian interests that had lost heavily in the first day of negotiations due to Lyriana's hardline stance. Interests that had both motive and opportunity. Interests that were now screaming for a full concordat inquiry. It was a masterpiece of digital framing. The Human Custodian, the non-entity, had just prevented a war by making it look like a business dispute. Lyriana sat in the medical bay, wrapped in a blanket, sipping a hot sweet beverage. She was not injured, but she felt scoured. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Kaelen moving through the assassins, not with rage, but with a terrible, beautiful efficiency. She saw the moment he broke the first one's neck. She heard the sound of a trachea collapsing. Captain Vorel stood at attention by the door, his pride a shattered thing. 3 of his guardians were dead. The others would recover. The finest warriors of the Sylvani, veterans of a dozen brushfire wars, had been neutralized by a technology they did not understand. And one human, a being they had been taught was a weak, sentimental child, had saved them all. "Your Highness," Vorel said, his voice thick with emotion he could not express. "I have no words. I failed you. My guardians failed you. If you wish for my resignation or my life, I will accept it without protest." Lyriana looked at him, and her heart ached for the ancient proud being before her. "You did not fail me, Captain," she said softly. "You fought with honor. The enemy simply had a weapon we did not understand, a weapon of biology, not of technology." She paused, her gaze going to the corridor beyond the door. He understood it, because it is his nature. She stood, the blanket falling away. She was the princess of the Sylvani again, though a part of her had been burned away in the garden. "Leave us, Captain. I wish to speak with my custodian. Alone." Vorel bowed, a deep formal gesture of respect and shame, and left. Kaelen was sitting on a small stool in the hallway, his back against the wall. He was cleaning his fingernails with a short, wicked-looking blade, the same one he had used to pick the lock on the service panel that housed the MP's control unit. He looked up as she approached. "Your Highness," he said, sheathing the blade and standing. "Do not Your Highness me," she said, her voice trembling with a mixture of emotion she could not name. "Not now. Not after." She gestured helplessly toward the garden dome, visible down the corridor. "What are you?" He was silent for a long moment. "I am a human, Lyriana. That is all. A son, a brother, a former soldier, a custodian, nothing more." "Do not lie to me," she whispered. "I saw what you are. You are not nothing. You are a force of nature." A faint, tired smile touched his lips. "We all are, in our own way. You are a force of patience and cultivation. The Grishna are a force of commerce. The Viridians are a force of knowledge. I am a force of persistence." "Persistence," she repeated. "You called it a hunting strategy." "It is our greatest strength and our greatest weakness," he said, leaning against the wall. "We do not know when to stop. We do not know when we are beaten. We will chase a goal across star systems, across centuries if we have to. We will wear it down. We will outlast it. That is how we survived Earth. That is how we will survive out here." "And if the thing you are chasing is us?" she asked, the question torn from her. He looked at her, and his eyes were ancient and sad. "Then I suppose we will wear each other down. But I would rather chase a treaty than a war, your highness. I truly would." She believed him. In that moment, she believed him completely. "Theron," she said, changing the subject, "he will face a concordat tribunal. He will likely be exiled, his name struck from the Sylvani rolls. Is that justice?" "It is a beginning," Kaelen said. "But the people who paid him, they will not be so easily touched. They will hide behind layers of corporate law and diplomatic immunity. They will smile and offer condolences and continue their work." "Then what do you suggest?" He pushed off the wall and faced her fully. "I suggest we become a problem they cannot ignore. I suggest we make the cost of crossing the Sylvani of crossing me so high that they think twice. I suggest we use the same tools they used: information, leverage, and a reputation for being unpredictable." Lyriana stared at him. The timid, forgettable man was gone. In his place was a strategist, a hunter, a king of a different jungle. "You would use their methods?" "I would use any method to keep you alive," he said simply. "That is my job. That is what you hired me for. That is what I am." She thought of the switched plate, the mapped patrols, the planted digital trails. He hadn't just survived the garden. He had been orchestrating it from the moment he'd stepped onto the station. He had let himself be mocked, pushed, underestimated, all to set a trap so perfect it had ensnared not just the assassins, but their entire network. "You knew about Theron from the beginning, didn't you?" she asked quietly. "The way he looked at me, the way he spoke, you saw it before I did." "I saw a man who saw a problem to be solved, not a person to be protected," Kaelen admitted. "I saw a man who was too eager for me to be gone. I saw a man who underestimated me as much as you did. That is always a dangerous mistake." Lyriana reached out, her hand trembling slightly, and touched his arm. The fabric of his fatigues was rough, stained, real. "Thank you," she said, the words inadequate, "for everything." He covered her hand with his own for a second, a brief, grounding pressure. "My duty, your highness." "It is more than that," she insisted. "You saved my life. You saved my people from a war they did not see coming. You have changed everything." He nodded, a small, acknowledging dip of his head. "Change is the only constant, your highness, even for ancient species." In the weeks that followed, the story spread like wildfire through the confluence and beyond. The tale of the human custodian who had single-handedly foiled an assassination plot against the Sylvani heir became legend. Some called it exaggeration. Others whispered of a new, terrifying kind of human warrior, a ghost or a silent knife. The great old ones, secure in their millennia of power, found the story amusing, a charming fiction about the enthusiastic youngsters of the galaxy. But Lyriana knew the truth. She saw the change in the way the Grishna trade envoy now deferred to her in negotiations, a flicker of unease in his multifaceted eyes when Kaelen stood in his customary shadow. She saw it in the way Viridian scholars now asked her careful, respectful questions about human evolutionary biology. She saw it in the way Captain Vorel now stood a little straighter when Kaelen was near, a new, hard respect in his posture. And she saw it in the mirror. She had crossed a threshold. She could never go back to seeing humans as soft, as harmless, as lesser. The universe had just gotten a lot larger, and a lot more dangerous, and a quiet, unassuming man in gray fatigues was now the most dangerous thing in it, as far as she was concerned. One evening, as the verdant will prepared to depart the confluence, Lyriana found Kaelen on the observation deck, watching the station's lights recede into the star-dusted black. "You are coming with us," she said. It was not a question. He turned. "My assignment is complete, your highness. The Concordat inquiry into Theron's associates will take months. My presence is no longer required." "Do not play the dutiful servant with me," she said, a hint of her old imperious tone returning, softened by affection. "You are coming with me to Silva Prime. You are my custodian, my protector, my blade in the darkness. That is not an assignment. That is a declaration." He was silent for a long time, looking out at the stars. "My place is with my own kind, Your Highness." "Your kind are scattered across 100 colonies and a dozen ships," she countered. "You are a human, yes, but you are my human, and I have need of you. The galaxy is not done testing us, it will test us again, and when it does, I want you at my side." He finally met her gaze. In his eyes, she saw the vast, lonely distances of his homeworld, the memory of 1 billion persistent hunters, and the quiet, steadfast loyalty of a man who had found a cause worth serving. "Understood, Your Highness," he said. It was enough. As the verdant will slid into the warp tunnel, a ribbon of stretched starlight, Lyriana stood beside him at the viewport. "What will you tell your people?" she asked. "About us? About me?" Kaelen's mouth quirked in a half-smile. "I will tell them the truth, that the Princess of the Sylvani is a formidable woman, that she is wise and brave and has a stubborn streak, a parsec wide, and that she is the only person I have ever met who looked at a room full of dead assassins and saw not an end, but a beginning." She looked at him, this unassuming, extraordinary man. "And what will you tell them about humans?" He put his hands in his pockets, his stance easy, but his eyes were on the infinite path ahead. "I will tell them," he said, his voice a soft promise in the humming dark, "that we are just getting started." Please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps me to create more HFY content for you guys.